In our previous movie about the subject, Is the Bible Corrupted?, we demonstrated that because of the variations in the Bible manuscripts found by archaeologists throughout the last 200 years, the current versions of the Bible are different, not just because of translations, but also because of the newly discovered manuscripts that contain new Bible verses that have been found, or verses that didn't exist except in later day versions of the Bible, proving that they never were original. While the modern day Catholic Church refuses to acknowledge these earlier manuscripts, Bible scholars are continually discovering and updating the Bible as new manuscripts are found. This is proof enough that the Church approved canon that the Christians call the Bible has itself been corrupted. After we demonstrated this in our last movie, some Christians have admitted that the Bible did in fact suffer some additions and deletions. But they try to play this down by claiming that all such corruptions are now known and only occurred later.
You say that we have changed and manipulated our text? Listen, we know when this happened. This happened in the 9th, 10th, or up to the 12th century, but we know exactly where they happened. We admit that they are there. We admit that that these are accretions that are added much later.
Some Christians say that Bible changes and alterations only happened from the 9th century onwards, and that they know when it happened, where it happened, and what was affected. But let's see if that's really true. The famous church father, Origen, actually quoted, "The differences among the manuscripts have become great, either through negligence of some copyists or through the perverse audacity of others. They either neglect to check over what they have transcribed, or in the process of checking, they make additions or deletions as they please." And he didn't specify where or who or how.
Listen, we know when this happened. This happened.
He just said, great. Just imagine how many alterations, deletions, and editing had to have happened for this early church father to be so concerned that he said that the differences between manuscripts have become so great. And do you know when he lived? It wasn't the 9th century.
9th century.
It wasn't the 10th century.
10th century.
It wasn't the 11th, 12th, or any other century afterwards.
Or up to the 12th century.
It was the 1st and early 2nd centuries. Yes, that's right. The 1st and early 2nd centuries, there was already complaints about large manuscript variations. But let's see what other people have to say from that era. 70 years earlier, a pagan named Celsus wrote about the Christians and their additions to their Bible. Here's what he had to say. "Some believers," referring to the Christians, "as though drunk from a drinking bout, go so far as to oppose themselves and alter the original text of their gospel 3 or 4 or several times over, and they change its character to enable them to deny difficulties in the face of criticism." Did you hear that? Did you understand what that meant? And things got so bad that the bishop of Corinth, called Dionysius, also complained. Dionysius was a contemporary of the famous church father Irenaeus, and he lived on the 2nd and 3rd century. Let's see what he said about this issue. "When my fellow Christians invited me to write letters to them, I did so. These devil's apostles have filled it with tares, taking away some things and adding others. For them is a woe reserved. Small wonder then if some have even dared to tamper with the word of the Lord himself, when they have conspired to mutilate even my own humble efforts." So here we have the Bishop of Corinth complaining that even the letters he writes for his congregational members or members in other places and parts of the world that are request his letters, even these letters get changed and altered. So little wonder, he says, that there is so much rampant changing of scriptures going on. So we know that all this editing, alteration, and deletions were happening at these times. So much, but we don't have any records of what exactly happened. And that these scholars are referring to, these church fathers are actually referring to, or even this pagan scholar who's debating against Christians, even he's mentioned the fact that no, even if you speak to Christians, even if you refute them on some points, they'll just change their text to come back on you in it. So that you even then you can't prove them wrong, because they'll just change their text to iron out any contradictions. So these are the kind of alterations that have happened. And as we know, during this period, church doctrine was still being formed and it was still being solidified. But now, let us demonstrate the kind of doctrinal induced changes of the Bible which happened. So let's look at the kind of alterations that did happen over this time that we do know about.
Now, let's look at one interesting error. Right, in Hebrews 1 verse 3, most manuscripts read, Christ bears or maintains all things by the word of his power. However, one notices in Codex Vaticanus, it reads, Christ manifests or reveals all things by the word of his power. So, another scribe came along, and whilst examining the Codex Vaticanus, he changed it back to the original, more common reading of Christ bears or maintains. However, a third scribe who looked at the text and its changes, changed it back from Christ bears and maintains back to Christ manifests or reveals, and wrote this note, "Fool and knave, leave the old reading and do not change it." So everybody get this right. This third scribe corrected the correction of the second scribe and returned it to the error of the first scribe. But not only did he do this, he also left a nice little insult for the second scribe who made the correction in the first place. From the looks of things, the second scribe just shouldn't have bothered.
Early Christians were so desperate to deify Jesus, they went as far as to change the text. The Alexandrian text is considered the oldest text available to the Christians, and this contained in John 1:18 the unique God. This is in reference to Jesus, and you find in all the Latin script it's actually put down as the unique Son. Christians are still debating to this day whether it's going to be put down as the unique God or as the unique Son in reference to Jesus. In the NASB, no man has ever seen God at any time. The only begotten God, who is the bosom of the Father, he has explained him. This is what they wrote. And Christians are still debating to this day about really what goes there. So what is it? Is it unique Son as found in all the Latin manuscripts? Or is it unique God as found in the Alexandrian text, which is older? But these are much fewer. The older Alexandrian text is obviously the odd one out here, which shows the Alexandrian people who wrote this were clearly trying to deify Jesus.
In 18th century, Johann J. Wettstein discovered that in the Codex Alexandrinus, 1 Timothy 3:16, where it said God was made manifest in the flesh, actually He was made manifest in the flesh. So he discovered that Bible scribes altered the word he, and they entered a symbol, the omicron, into the theta, and it became God. So he discovered where Bible scribes have deliberately altered the text to transform the simple word where it says that Jesus is manifest in the flesh, he is manifest in the flesh, and they changed it to God is manifest in the flesh. Johann discovered many such pro-divinity alterations of the Bible, and he was branded a heretic by a lot of the Christians for attacking pro-divinity verses of the Bible. But in this particular case, he did prove conclusively that this verse was changed to make Jesus into a divine being in this issue. In Luke 22:17-19, Jesus is having